cocoa, whichever one you prefer. And let's get to it. Once again, welcome to Sunrise.
Thank you for staying with us. Well, as you garnered from that report, the whole thing seemed to have started from Abuja and spread to other parts of the country. And we were told that it was a result of the flooding. Well, obviously I said something funny.
Well, is there flooding in Lagos?
Well, the independent...
That's disturbed movement of... I'm just asking.
The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of Nigeria, IPMAN, has said that the increase in the pump price, which we are witnessing, is a result of the hike in the cost as sold by private depot owners. IPMAN said that there had been an increase in depot price from 148 naira and 17 kobo per litre to 178 naira per litre.
Last week.
How can you purchase something at 178 and sell it at 165? That doesn't make good business sense to me. But
any business sense.
I am not an economist, and I'm not a good business person.
Yeah, a trader.
So today we hear that petrol is being sold at between 195 and 200 naira per litre in Lagos and surrounding states, while in places like Kwara, Ondo, Osun, Ekiti, it goes for between 200 and 210 naira per litre.
How much it will be selling in Nasarawa,
Sokoto,
Maiduguri, Kaduna,
yeah.
Sokoto.
But the point is, when are we going to be done with all this fuel scarcity and prices going up? I mean, there seems to be no end to this. Isn't there anything that that Nigeria can do so that this thing just stabilizes and we stop waking up to fuel shortages? Is that where I'm going to start from? Mr. Gbenga Adeoye, a chartered accountant, is with us this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure being here today.
Do you have petrol in your car?
Well, I came to Ireland from Abeokuta through train yesterday.
Okay. How much did you pay for petrol the last time you purchased petrol?
Well, I think my driver handles that.
Oh.
But I know that...
you bring out the money, so you should have an idea how much he paid.
Yes. Right now, you have 180 in some places. You have 190 in some stations. And just like you just said, it doesn't make good economic sense for you to buy something for 178 and you want to sell for 165. I'm aware of a client that bought, I think yesterday, for 190. So he's going to sell at about 220 to end users.
This whole thing is becoming tiresome as far as Nigerians are concerned. The prices just keep changing. And have you heard NNPC make any statement about this?
Well,
flooding?
Flooding is one, but
thieving?
The cause of fuel scarcity in Nigeria, as far as I know, about 40 years ago, up till now, you witness one scarcity or the other, an increase in prices. But there are about 12 factors causing...
12?
Yes, 12. But before we count, we need to also take note that there is a Yoruba proverb that says, "He that dwells beside the orange is not supposed to consume the one that is sour." You know. I don't know if that interpretation
is deep. That's
yes,
deep.
it's very deep. Now, there's a report in 2016 that talks about oil reserve in the world. Venezuela was number 1. You have Saudi Arabia as number 2, Canada number 3. You have Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and then you have United Arab Emirates. Then you have Russia, Libya, and then you have Nigeria as number 10. U.S. coming as number 11. In all these 11 countries, it's only in Nigeria that you can actually remember witnessing long queues in petrol stations, people carrying jerry cans here and there. And so, if you look at that, you then realize that most of these people do not import finished product to their countries. Let's say all of them. Now, the U.S. that tells us about electric cars and the rest, they are keeping their reserve. They are number 11. But they import more crude oil and keeping. At the end of the day, we may end up buying from these countries that are smart. So let's look at the 12 factors, if we can cover all. Number 1 is OPEC determining crude oil price in the that you buy. And I have advocated that a lot of people are saying, okay, we're going to have private refineries in Nigeria. At what price are you going to sell to them? Now, we may have to go the way of Gaddafi in Libya. You cannot allow OPEC to decide how much you're going to sell crude to your people for domestic production and consumption. And so, if you look at Dangote refinery that is coming on board, the one coming up in Edo State, and other ones. So you need to now sit down and let's be sincere with the cost of production. So you do what we call marginal costing. You determine the break-even point, and then you decide on the margin, maybe 20%. So if truly the cost of production is 150 naira, for example, you can then say you can sell at 160. I'm just giving that as an example of, say, crude oil.
Yeah.
So you then say that for every organization, every refinery producing for the country, you sell to them at a different price.
Okay.
For those that are exporting, you sell to them at another price. Now that is OPEC problem number 1 that causes scarcity. Is whatever they sell crude that determines, your this thing. What do you call it? The price that you're going to buy the finished product. And so when you look at all of this put together, you see that the importers of PMS into the country, they are selling at the price that they are getting it.
Yeah.
So problem number 1. The second problem is the method of distribution. It's only in Nigeria that you have tankers loaded with highly inflammable product moving in the midst of other vehicles on Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. Now, when I see this truck move ahead of me, I get scared. I tell my driver, please don't go near. Now, other countries, you can't find this moving around on the road. So, our method of distribution is a problem. Now, point of distribution is another problem. That's problem number 3. So, number 1, we cannot...
How do both differ?
Yes, it differs. So, what I advocate for Nigeria is to say point of distribution in Nigeria should be in the 6 geopolitical zones. So, you should have in the 6 geopolitical zones such that you will have people doing the distribution from that point. So you run a pipeline or you have a dedicated rail line that moves product to these locations. So that's what we call point of distribution. Method of distribution, which we use truck, is leading with different problems. So you have bad roads as a problem. Flooding is also going to
But that wasn't always the only way we did it before.
Well, the rails that carry cargoes, they are not yet in place. We used to have in the past, now that they are trying to reawaken the rail system. So 23 years is enough for us to have taken a decision on having a dedicated rail line that goes to the distribution point. And then you now have method of distribution in each of the states, different from having the tankers move across the road. Insecurity on the road is another issue. And then you now have exchange rate fluctuation, because not all the importers are getting their finished product from NNPC. Not all of them also have foreign exchange.
But we are told that NNPC is the only body that imports fuel into Nigeria.
No, NNPC is more or less like a regulatory body. So if you want to import, you have to go through the banks, you get foreign exchange, and then you have your license to do your importation. NNPC is more like a midwife. NNPC is not the one that has the money for the importation. You are the one that will source your fund by yourself in the bank. So interest rate is going to affect you. And so when you have your product and you have come up with your cost, you then sit down and say, look, this is the price at which I'm getting it, and this is the best price that I can sell.
Okay.
And so a number of factors.
But those factors, just before we bring in our next guest, those factors, valid as they are, that revelation came up not too long ago, that even though it was just recently that people knew that NNPC wasn't doing the importing by itself. It was doing it through some agencies, some other private organizations, just as you said. So it wasn't particularly a liberalized importation system, because perhaps then, if it was completely liberalized, the Petroan, the Momans of this world would have collaborated to say, we're going to import into the country. So that is why the subsidy regime is still existing. Yes,
so like we have different vocabularies added to our language in recent time, thanks to Ashwaji Bola Ahmed Tinubu, with two of the vocabularies. One is Olule, the other is Emiloko. The youth, they've added another one, they call it Japa. I'm going to add another one, it's Chop City. Chop City. So you call it subsidy, but I call it Chop City. Now, if you look at the 6 million liter consumption that is being talked about as the, okay, of course.
Daily.
You know, I was talking about 12 factors. Subsidy is also a factor.
Is it subsidy or chop city?
Yeah, you call it subsidy. Now I call it chop city. Chop city. You know, for our viewers to understand. But it's chop city.
Before you continue.
Okay, we've since been joined by Mr. Kayode Okpaifa, who is Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development. Good morning. Of course, you know he was the former Commissioner for Transportation in Lagos State.
Good morning.
Now you know there is chop city.
just keep me out of that.
But you know, before we continue, I think we are number 5 or number 6 now.
I think number 5.
Okay. But let's take some comments from you about this whole lingering fuel shortage thing. Just yesterday, I was in company of a friend who called a fuel station owner, saying that, and she got the information there and told me that, look, they now pick fuel at 186 naira per liter at the depot, and it's supposed to be, according to the core, an NNPC fuel station. Now, so if NNPC, and that is why according to this fellow, NNPC fuel stations don't have fuel. I was there at the conversation, so I heard it myself. So that's partly the reason why the fuel stations don't have fuel. Some of them don't have. Where some have, they have long queues. I'm sure you have seen some of them. What do you make of all of these?
Yeah, sorry for coming late. It's part of the situation for ourselves. It's all about this unpredictability of certain things. If somebody gets at 180 what? 86, and I passed through some stations along the way, and they read 175. And I asked my driver, how much did you buy last? He said 175. So we can't say the person who is getting it at 186 is wrong, because you also get to stations that says they are selling at 189, 190, 200. So what that tells us is that there are pricing issues. And like you said, some have distribution and logistics issues. So it does tell us that there are many issues confronting these guys. And another of it he has also mentioned is the issue of the exchange rate and how much they get, the foreign currency or the availability. Then also availability of the product from who is your own client. So there are many players that supplies the product to different retailers and marketers. For me, I believe what that tells us, there are issues in the pricing, there are issues with logistics, and there are issues in operational details of what is going on. And the expectation is for the managers of the sector, whoever is responsible for regulatory or monitoring to combat. The reality for Nigerians is to understand that the regime has actually changed with the PIA. The one that is suspended
That's the pricing regime.
It definitely. The moment you sign it into law, what is suspended is the issue of subsidy removal. But there are other things going on in the country or in the sector that affects price. If you have a disaster like the flooding and logistics is impacted, if my driver stays 3 days on the road to get to the landing, I'm still going to pay the driver for the days stayed on the road. So I'm going to input that into my costing. And then that means that driver cannot get back to the depot to lift. In terms of the supply chain is already disrupted. So also at the depot, if they are able to release, let's say, 50 trucks a day, and trucks are stocked, the trucks are not going to be manufactured afresh at the depot. So for the trucks to come back, so the depot is going to have problem discharging trucks. Those are the logistics. That's area I'm more concerned about. So there is a disruption in the logistics chain, and that comes at a cost. That's number one. When that happens, then there's going to be sort of scarcity. It's not as if the thing is not available, but it's not going to be available the way it should be available at the end point, and that also has to be costed. Is an accountant. Everything has a cost. The delay, the disruption, the extra day your driver spends on the road, the inability to use your equipment, that is your truck, to lift. Now, also is the mode, you mentioned as I was commenting, the mode of delivery. We have pipeline, over 4,000 kilometers or so. We have the system 2A, system 2B. As of 2015, I was involved in the distribution issue. It was when the current government came in, those pipelines were completely down. But before February, before January, they were able to pump off as far as Ilorin. At least Ibadan was okay. Ilorin was, they were struggling, but they were pumping to Ilorin. It doesn't mean they were not losing products, but it was still manageable.
Sorry, just to be clear, these pipelines are for what?
To move the fuel.
Move fuel.
That's the best mode. It's the normal mode to move fuel. You now end it with trucks. you move with pipeline. You move from, okay, let's take from this angle, the Lagos angle, that system, I believe that's system 2A, from Atlas Cove, Imosimi, or Ijibu, then from there to Ibadan to Ilorin. Then on the other side, from Warri, Port Harcourt, you go through Calabar and the rest, you go to Maiduguri.
So these pipes move finished products,
yeah, finished
not
products.
crude.
No, not crude. They move finished. I don't.
Yes,
no, they also move crude. But I'm talking of, they move these finished products.
Yes, PNS.
The ones that are imported.
Then the Lokoja, Suleja, I think Suleja is the central point for the North Central. Now, if you can move the fuel in the pipeline, you save cost. So only the ones that are for Lagos will get to Lagos or to Apapa or to Imosimi or to Ijibu to load. That's when he was talking about the distribution points. Now, if you now pick from those, and then your cost of transportation, your logistics cost is within a manageable range. You don't need to spend so much.
Yeah.
And that's why the government introduced the bridging, where if you move from Lagos to Kano, they pay some amount of, that was an issue some few months ago. I believe that has been settled. Now, that is a cost. Now, if I now move from Lagos, from Ibadan, and I'm going to Osun, or I'm going to Ilorin, assuming I have lifted from Imosimi, or I've lifted from Ibadan depot, or I've lifted from Ore depot, my cost of transportation also is reduced. My cost of operations is also. Now, you now come back to the situation that is happening all over the world. Worldwide, logistics system is being affected. In fact, some countries are yet to recover. China is yet to recover. If you import goods from China before the Ukraine, Russia, and EU, it takes certain days. It's now taking almost twice those number of days to get to this part of the world. That is also a cost. Now, we now import finished products from the IC. It's coming down. It gets to Nigeria, and you have issues to use your daughter vessel to go and load from the big vessel that brings it. It's called the mother vessel. Your own small, you have to load. And the cost of currency has changed. I was told they used to spend 30,000 naira, $30,000 per truck. I don't, per vessel. Now they're spending 50,000 plus. So it's like doubled. And that is an additional cost. And then you now have the disruption in the logistics on the IC also. The cost of transportation worldwide, that is on the sea also, has increased. If you ask those who are doing freight forwarding, they will tell you. So many things are happening even beyond the control. Then that brings us to the issue of what then is the appropriate pricing model. So the people, the players, the accountants, the economists will tell you the best thing is to allow for an open system, that is the deregulated system. And what we opted for in 2016 was liberalization. That is hoping that we can have control on the exchange rate, have control on the crude. Now, our crude was also being challenged. I went through the data recently. In 2015, the crude production came down. By 2016, we have gotten back to 2.09 million barrels per day. And from 2019, it was rising. It rose up to, 2019, we got to 2 point something. And it started declining again from 2019. So you also need to look into that context. It's political. You see, what did we do in 2016 that changed the narrative? That was when the presidency, the Delta State government, and the then GMD, Dr. Ibe Kachuku, who also doubled as a minister, went into the Niger Delta, had some sort of dialogue, and the militancy thing. The militancy started really after the election. You understand why? After the election of 2015, they disrupted the thing. You can call it banditry, which is what we're experiencing in some other part. Then they were able to resolve that. Then why did it now start going down again from 2019? Now there is a new arrangement to get it stopped with bringing back the guys who were there in 2015. So you see, there are a lot of disruption in that sector. So we thank God the PIA Act came into being. Unfortunately, we have to wait on the the regulation side to wait till June. So in my own view, I think the NNPC, NMDPRA, and the major regulators, monitors, and major players need to find a way to sit down with the major stakeholder, operating stakeholder, MOMAN, major oil marketers, DAPMAN, depot owners. If you go to Nupeng, they will raise issues that they are buying at social price at the depot. You get to the depot owner, it will count his own operational expenses that are not foreseen, that are not within the calculation of the subsidized fuel. And let me give you a simple analogy. The woman who sells palm oil or who sells bread to me on my street, you will wonder what's her business with the cost of petroleum or diesel if she's not moving anywhere. The fact is that our rent has changed. So many things that are not related to that palm oil business has changed. The school fees of the son, grandchildren, whatever changes. The cost of Panadol, the malaria drugs, which is the one that is really market, also changed. So the woman is just intuitively change the cost of palm oil.
You just remind me of
so
a joke.
These are things that are going on.
I said a joke in the course of the week. An orange seller was talking to a driver, someone driving a car. He said, "How much is the orange?" He told him, "That's not the price I bought it here." He said,
"You don't know the
dollar." Orange seller, dollar.
How? Yeah, well, Mr. Ade, I'm pretty sure you want to respond to some of the things.
Yes,
because you know it's quite a conundrum. I used to think that, look, this thing is just a simple process, but it sounds a lot more like rocket science in my ears.
No. It's actually not rocket science. Okay, we were talking about he also mentioned this issue of distribution method, and then the loading point. So insecurity is a major issue again, and then the theft of crude is what we're talking about now. People do not talk about even the theft of finished product. There are several fire incidents that you've heard about several places as a result of people who also steal finished product. So I think maybe NNPC and the body involved in pumping through the pipelines, they have issues with making this fuel to pass through the pipeline. So that's why you see more of trucks on our roads. So that's one. But the major challenge that we have about our pricing is that we are importing the finished product where raw material is coming from. And so when you import, even the landing cost that the government is talking about is not real, because as at May this year, we understand that fuel should be going for about 462 naira per liter. If you look at the real cost. And what are the makeup of this cost? Shipping costs.
For people whose minimum wage is 30,000 naira,
of course,
they're going to buy petrol at 462 naira per liter.
Another issue is that export to neighboring country of subsidized product. So you now discover that the 66 million liter that we're talking about may not be real. I don't know how they came up with this, but 66 million liter per day. One analyst came out last month and said Pakistan and other places where they have more vehicular movement, they do not consume as much as we consume. So something is wrong somewhere. So when you see people get subsidy or chopsidy on product that is meant to be sold to Nigerians at a particular price, and then they take it to another country to make higher profit. More or less, government is giving free money. That's why I call it chopsidy. Not only that, there is also round-tripping movement that we also understand. You recall that there was a time the House of Representatives was conducting a probe that vessels will come into the country, submit documentation for imported fuel, and then the vessel will move back to another country and subsidy is paid. So these factors, they are there.
Can we say?
I know that when you were commissioner in Lagos State, a lot of attempt went into sorting out the public transportation system so that there'll be fewer cars on the roads. More people would use the public transport system. Number one, how successful has that been? And two, the Blue Line was test run a short while ago. So we expect that it's going to come into effect by next month, I think. So when all that happens, will there be a reduced number of cars on the roads? And therefore, will we require less petrol?
You're taking me to another area. That's the issue of mass transit. In 2012, 13, after that, pump price increased from I think it was 60 something to 97. Intention was to raise it to 120 naira per liter. There was extensive work by all the states of the federation on the framework for mass transit system in Nigeria. Already Lagos was ahead, and Lagos already has a policy of mass transit movement. And as of today, Lagos has even gone almost 6 times that capacity. But don't forget that people just also keep coming in. It's a dynamic system. And that also helps in the carbon emission level. But don't forget, that same sector is now being affected by diesel. When that sector is affected by diesel, for example, in Lagos, and their prices move from 100 naira recently to 300 naira, and also they also face issue of spare parts.
Diesel?
No, I'm talking of buses.
The tickets.
The big buses. Okay. So you now see more people have now, with the subsidized fuel now, is it not easier for me to go with my petrol that is already subsidized or rather than. So there are so many challenges, but by and large for Lagos, I know Lagos. So on the rail system, the rail also moves on diesel as of today. And when the test run, I don't believe is for immediate running. The governor explained that it will operate around sometimes in the first quarter of 2023. Yeah. And that is for the red line. I don't know if the same applies to the blue line, because the plan for the blue line is to have it electrified. Is to have it an electric line. That is.
Oh dear.
So is the red line, I believe.
Sounds like you're afraid that NEPA will take like.
Yes, exactly.
No, he's going to be dedicated. He's a dedicated.
Exactly.
He's going to be on the dedicated power plant. So for Lagos is progressing and doing far, but it's not the same for all other parts of the country. And although Lagos Abuja, I think is Rivers, consume the major power, almost over 60%.
Can I ask you?
But on mass transit, that's another way to reduce the consumption. But that also has to be, if we still import diesel, and diesel is affected by the price of crude, and diesel is already deregulated. So we have to find an holistic way out of this.
It's a vicious cycle, isn't it?
So that's why we are saying, it's more, to me, I call it there is a distribution and logistics, and there's also a mobility issue. I don't call it transportation.
Can I ask you a question, Mr. Proffer? Now, you talked about Lagos and the interventions Lagos is, putting for its own indigenes and residents. Is there a lot of these things sounds like it's more a federal government affair or a centralized affair. So it's all for the NNPC and national laws, PIA, and all of that. Is there anything that states can do to help this mobility challenge that you talked about now? So, because one thinks, if the deregulation starts from federal government to state governments intervening in that level, at that level of, the supply chain and all, perhaps that can help ameliorate some of the challenges that people are having.
I believe it's not really a centralized problem. At the level of mobility, transportation, except for the aviation sector, is open for states to operate easily. Even rail, that the law does not permit the railway corporation and the Ministry of Transportation has also opened it. That's why you see Lagos.
I'm talking about the importation of fuel and all those things. I mean, because I don't know if it is something that states themselves can come into. Because if that collaboration
unless
could
it is
happen between the
regulated,
NNPC,
if it's not regulated, there's no way they can come in. Except if it is regulated, then it's an all-comers. And state government don't need to get involved. There are industry players who are perfected, who have expertise. The issues are not that people cannot import, but you have foreign exchange constraints. The fuel is there, but what is important is we should produce. How can we be importing fuel when we have the raw material? So you have the Dangote refinery issue, you have Boak coming up with his own, then you have this modular refinery. Guess what? The modular refineries are not interested in PMS. They're interested in AGO, diesel. You know why? Because there's still a price differential between the cost of PMS in Nigeria and the price of PMS in Lume, all those surrounding and neighbors. So if you produce in Nigeria, how much are you going to sell? Since they know they will not be able to sell at their production cost, then they rather produce AGO. Mind you, it is the same raw material. So instead of configuring my distillation process and my refining process to produce certain amount of a PMS, I will just program it to produce all AGO, because that's where I can make my money. And that's why you see those who are even stealing the crude and doing local refinery, they are refining mostly diesel.
It sounds like a lot of work in my ears, because I mean, you talked about the moving of fuel from Lagos to this, and then
it's possible.
And at the same time, the states are just going to say no, they have no role in this. Well, we'll talk more on this when we return from this break. Please stay with us. Well, thank you for staying with us on the program this morning. Well, these issues are not just going to go away, Mr. Adeoye. So this is where we are now. Listening to Mr. Proffer, it seems like we know exactly what to do.
Oh, yes.
From all the analysis that is done, we've left some things undone for a long time, and this is where we are now, and how come we are here. Where do we go from here?
Okay, it's never too late to start from now. I'd say within the next 4 years, what can we do about distribution point, that's the loading point, and then the distribution method. I was talking about other factors that affect it. Deliberate hoarding is also a factor that affects prices.
Who's hoarding?
The station owners, as a result of certain statements that are made. For example, if you just hear that government is going to remove subsidy by December 15, and what it means to you is that your cost of replacing your stock is probably going to be more than double. And you do not know the transition period within which government would determine that we have fully paid you subsidy on all your products. And so you know that for you to go to the market to get certain, maybe 33,000 liters again, you will not be able to even buy a truck with your capital. So they feel like, look, let me keep this until there is increase in price. Now, if you listen to immediately announce the redenomination of the Naira that is going to start from 15th of December. So a lot of people who, they are not sure, they don't even know what is going to happen. As a result of uncertainty, you see the demand in the parallel market rose to the extent that dollar is being exchanged for about 900 Naira to a dollar. So these are also factors.
Well, that raises another question, Mr. Adeoye, just a second. So that raises the question of communication. Okay. You have been in government. Sometimes when these issues arise and, people, there's a comment from government, the panic follows almost immediately.
Yeah.
And that is usually as a result of how those policies or decisions or options or governance issues are communicated to people.
Thank you. I was just looking for opportunity to get to that angle, and it took us there. Now, you see, the media narrative is critical in the market, free market economy, and we all have a blame or a responsibility in this regard. In this industry, you have many stakeholders, stakeholding interests, and one thing that is synonymous in this industry is that there is a blame game always going on. And once they come to the media, this one says this one is responsible. It results into what you measure. That's a deliberate audit. So anything that comes into the public, there is need for proper and strategic communication. And that is what some clients have done. For example, in the US, they were affected by this price of crude. And after looking at the thing kept rising, the next thing they started publishing is, now it's on the media that in the last 3 weeks, the pump price of petrol in the US had been coming down. It's been coming down. And they keep hitting the public with that information, just for them to know that there is hope at the end of the tunnel. What did the government do? They released their strategic reserves to force the price down. So they didn't deny that the price was going to go up. They said, because of this war, these things are happening, these are the facts. By the time we release 200,000, whatever metric tons of this, we expect the price to fall. And when the price increases again, they will give the exact information. Now, coming to each other and the media, sometimes the headlines in our media outreach are just misleading. By the time you read the content, assuming Moman comes out with a statement now, or DAPMAN, or NMDPRE, or NNPC, by the time you read the headline, it's alarming, scary. By the time you read the content, it's a different calming situation. So the public will react. So the people who has this product and they are not sure what will happen next will just. So the regulators, the monitors or whatever, the NNPC, and the other stakeholders it's not just a government communication
you said
issue.
something, yes, sir. You said something about strategy.
Yeah.
In communication. Perhaps that's the challenge, and it should not necessarily, because we're news hounds. We will find the news.
No, government has to play a major role.
Exactly. Yeah. Because let me give you the example of NLNG, for instance. They came out with the announcement of force majeure that for this reason they will not be able to meet their obligations. That was all that people had. The assumption in the heads of many people is it's going to affect gas. So they had to release another information to say we are still producing. The assumption was force majeure means we're not doing anything anymore because we will not be able to meet obligations. And consequently, people say, hey, gas prices. Next thing you know, that, and of course they came out and of course they had granted us an interview, explained all these things. So sometimes it is in how strategic the communication from government is, because people are always going to feel. In fact, the
current cues or fluctuation in prices and the deliberate hoarding is as a result of, I believe, is as a result of a communication issue, because people are not quite sure. Like some people put there that every November is when the thing starts and it's preparatory to Christmas. And I know, and I believe, the media is very powerful. Believe me, regardless of who is speaking. Once anybody in the media they say it's from China, oh, it's from this, and then it's correct. And like you said, that's the information you have. And I believe our managers of these critical assets, they need to spend more time. Information can never be too much, provided it is strategically crafted. And once it is strategically crafted and delivered, and all the stakeholders are part of that construction, so nobody would look like he's being put.
Which raises another issue, Mr. Proffer, that of the agencies there, as you said, many stakeholders working in silos. What is happening at NMDPRA is not known to what NNPCL is doing.
No,
it's
they
not
know,
known.
they
I'm
know.
just saying. I mean, these things sometimes just happen. Moman is complaining about inadequate information. Petron is complaining. You know, all pockets of issues here and there. Now we are also hearing that maybe it's in New Peng that they are raising some issues of harassment here and there. So it seems like we're not always working in silos.
I can for free tell you that I have a sort of relationship with many of the stakeholders in that sector. They have a minimum agreement on what is going on. Where this issue normally comes up is one member or one of the major stakeholder makes a statement and looks indicting against the other comes out to defend himself, and that comes to strategic communication. It's not, so the communication they're coming out with is not strategically made. They just talk it. So there is a need, seriously speaking, that's one area that needs to be properly managed. If it's properly managed, I won't be scared that the price will increase by 2 kobo, 2 naira, or whatever, because I have heard from all the stakeholders that these are the challenges because of the Lokoja thing. This is going to happen because, you know, and let me just put it here: they move fuel from Ogara, they move from Wari, they move from different locations, and they've improved on those points so that the cost shouldn't be high. Now, if the people know that my own is not coming, is not affected by the Lokoja one, I'm in a Delta, I won't be scared to start increasing or ordering my product. So we need to do more on that. And I agree with you, they need to do more engagement.
We must wind down now. We must wind down. So I will take your closing statement, Mr. Dewe. So we have this lingering fuel shortage. What is the solution, do you think?
Well, number one, communication is key. And then number two, government need to review our distribution, that's loading points, and then the distribution method. Now, when the crisis of flood started, I was expecting that we could actually take fuel through waterways. No, this is part of what government need to re-examine, and then we should stop importing fuel as much as possible. Let's produce here.
But even if we started today, we will not be able to produce enough for the whole country. Mr. Proffer.
Number one, I agree with you. We improve on the strategic communication to the people. Then there is need for much more collaboration among the major stakeholders. And number three is that there is need for us, all of us, to look at the issue of the appropriate pricing of fuel.
Mr. Kaude Okwefa, Executive Director, Center for Sustainable Mobility and Access Development, and former Commissioner for Transportation, Lagos State, as well as Mr. Benga Adeoye, Chartered Accountant, were our guests on this segment this morning. Thank you very much for coming, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We hope that those who are going to be able to do something about this situation are listening to you and will take into account the suggestions that you have made.
And stop chop city.
You need to define that job.
You define it another day.
Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. See you soon.